Wey, ko ari ngai lo pitin jara wangkani. Ka wangkanya ngaja jingo nyura protokole ne. Protokole ramba mara katoriwa. Nyura kole ne? Poto korea ramba mara katoriwa. Wia? If you don't understand what I'm saying, put up your hand. Okay, so chances are for most of us in this room, you felt some discomfort, some confusion at least, and perhaps even some annoyance. That was the beautiful Pitjantjatjara language from the central desert of Australia. And what you just experienced, that discomfort, that confusion, is what I first experienced when I moved to that part of this country. I moved there as a new teacher to learn how to be a teacher, to make a difference. And a young girl actually came up to me and said, "Yaljilango nyondo, yalara nyondo anani." Of course, I didn't have the faintest idea what she was saying. But what she had said is, "Where are you from? And when are you leaving?" But I think what she meant to say, actually, is, how long are you staying? Are you staying long enough to connect with me, my language, my culture? You see, language is our superpower. It is the key engine behind the success of our entire species. It enables us to communicate, to connect, to compel. As young children, we have an instinct for language, absorbing the words around us, soaking them up until they become us. It's language that formulates who we are and how we are. So what happens? How do we lose that wonder, the playful wonder of language we have as children when we become adults? I think it comes down to fear of failure, of discomfort. I'm going to take you from Central Australia now to here, Adelaide, in the 80s. Great decade. And I was a young boy growing up here, the first in my family to be born in this country. My mum, my beautiful mother, came from a remote village in northern Greece, and my father from the United Kingdom with Welsh and Irish heritage. So I was growing up here in the suburbs, a normal Adelaidean boy. But when I was 16 years old, my papu in this photo, my great-grandfather, died suddenly and tragically. And at that point in my life as a young boy, as a young man, I reflected and thought, have I ever connected deeply with the man that he was? We used to play a game. He used to say, "Louka Parry, ti ineto onomasu." Come here, Louka. What's your name? And I would say, "Louka Cosma Hashotis Parry," my full name. And he would be delighted because my two middle names are his own. And so now that he was gone, I realized that we had interacted, but I had no memory of speaking with him in English, having a conversation, of asking him about the sacrifices that he made to travel to this country and set up a life here. So that moment changed my life. I threw myself into learning languages, passionately pursuing modern Greek for my ancestry and Spanish. Not least of all, to connect with my yaya. I wasn't going to make the same mistake again. And over the next 10 years, I learned modern Greek because her English, just like my papu's, was so broken that it was always hilarious to hear them speak it, but it was also hard to connect at a deep level. And I learned an incredible amount from her. Her persistence, her insights, her perspective, but certainly her love. So I traveled around the world, from countries to cities, cultures, and different communities, until I found myself in Chile, introducing myself as un australiano, an Australian. And what I didn't know then is there's a joke in the Spanish-speaking world that says, Chile. Nobody knows what the Chileans are saying. Why would you go there to learn Spanish? And I failed every single day. Publicly, humiliatingly, by tripping over words or saying the wrong thing. In fact, one of my favorite memories is from a good friend of mine who was studying with me, a guy called James. And we went to this party. We hadn't been in Chile very long, and he fell over. We had been drinking a lot of pisco, which is a type of brandy in Chile, so that might explain it. But everyone laughed, and he stood up and kind of brushed himself off and said, "Perdón, estoy un poco embarazado." Which we thought meant, "Excuse me, I'm a little bit embarrassed," right? But everyone laughed, even harder than they laughed the first time. And we kind of looked at each other in confusion. What he had just said is, "Excuse me," proclaiming it to the room. But I'm a little bit pregnant. And so, once we worked that out, we also discovered, I think, the power of those language learning moments, the power of words. Certainly, I never made that same mistake. And that's really the game here. But as I was traveling around the world, I was saying I'm an Australian, I'm an Aussie. I also became really conscious that I knew very little about this amazing city of Adelaide, outside of my suburb. And certainly, I didn't know much about Australia. This was the map I was used to seeing, the quintessential map of Australia with the different states and territories. I also discovered that in my travels, education was the key social lever for change. So I came back and studied to be a teacher. And I found myself traveling 15 hours by car away from here in Adelaide to the Central Desert in the far northwest of South Australia to begin my teaching career on the Anangu, Pitjantjatjara, Yankunytjatjara lands. I'd also come across this map by that stage. And I started to realize the incredible diversity that doesn't just exist in our communities, but exists amongst First Australian communities. So there I was, learning my craft as a teacher, the art and the science of teaching. I was trying to connect with the community. I engaged with every community activity that was going on, playing football. And if you look very carefully, you can probably see where I fit in the team lineup. I'm incredibly humbled to speak Pitjantjatjara and Yankunytjatjara. And I was taught that by sitting down, connecting, and having conversations with elders, with the old people in this place, and the incredible knowledge that they have. I also realized, really for the first time in my life, that I'm an educated, white man, living in a society that privileges those types of people. So, by learning the culture and language in that place, I felt I could get as close as I could to understanding what it means to be a minority and to understand the privileged position that I have in a society like this. So, why learn a language? One thing I discovered by living in the middle of Australia is that all of us at some point might have said, "Where are we? This is the middle of nowhere." Put your hands up if you've ever said, "Where am I right now? Where are we? This is the middle of nowhere." I used to say that all the time, but what I've realized through working across cultures, across languages, is that the middle of nowhere for one person might just be the middle of everything for another. So why learn a language? This is my beautiful paternal grandmother, Mari Hilton Parry. She's a wonderful matriarch of our family. She's also one of the 50 million people worldwide that has dementia. And it's a terrible disease. In fact, 1 in 3 of us in our 80s develop this disease. The first reason you should learn another language is because it makes your brain healthier. We now know that by speaking multiple languages, You can delay the onset of dementia by 5 years at least. We also know that multilingual speakers, they can increase the density of the prefrontal cortex of the brain, the executive function region. This is how we solve problems, how we focus, how we distinguish between tasks. Second, learning another language makes you a better learner and communicator. Not least of all because you have to fail consistently, publicly, just like my pregnant friend. And that failure, getting comfortable with that discomfort, really is the key to all learning. And in a world, a modern age, where we have artificial intelligence and exponential technologies disrupting our society, it's critical to be life-wide and lifelong learners. And a better communicator, because by stepping into another language, you can look back at your own and understand the power of the words that we use. That is a critical insight for connection. And finally, thirdly, it also enables us to understand each other. Nelson Mandela once said, if you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. But if you speak to him in his language, it goes to his heart. What I've realized by learning languages as an adult is that I can connect. It is the way that we can empathize and take perspective. We become more passionate and compassionate. We can step into the shoes of another human being, a fellow global citizen. If there's anything our world needs today, it's deeper, richer connection. So, by learning another language, you will have a healthier brain, you will be a better learner and communicator, and you will also be able to connect, to take perspective, to understand what it means to be somebody else. And that level of connection is exactly what we need in the world today. So, as a 20-year-old, as an adult, I spoke one language, English. Now, I'm incredibly lucky to speak 5. So my question is not why learn a language? It's why haven't you? Thank you.